For thousands of years, humanity has searched for the hidden threads connecting spirit, consciousness, science, and the future of our world. Shaman Jon Rasmussen brings together ancient wisdom, modern insight, and the deeper mysteries shaping human evolution. Welcome to Shaman Radio.
Imagine for a second that you're standing right at the edge of a swimming pool, and you decide to just wade in.
Okay.
At first, you can push through the water pretty easily. You're just walking. But then you try to run.
Right. Which never works out well.
No, exactly. Suddenly that water gets incredibly heavy. It physically resists you. And if you push it to the absolute limit, try to sprint as fast as humanly possible, the physics of the water will actually start to violently pull you backward.
Yeah, you become completely trapped by the rules of the medium you're moving through.
Exactly. You are trapped. Now, I want you to keep that feeling in your mind, but imagine a vehicle that can not only, completely ignore that fundamental rule of physics, but can use this mind-bending loophole to literally swim through solid rock.
I mean, it completely shatters our entire conventional understanding of physical limitations.
It really does.
We're so accustomed to the everyday realities of friction and resistance that the concept of just, opting out of those forces, it feels less like advanced engineering and a lot more like magic.
Mm-hmm. And that feeling right there, confronting the impossible, is exactly why today's deep dive is tailored perfectly for you. We are looking at this incredible, sweeping theory proposed by an engineer named Jon Rasmussen.
It's a fascinating theory.
It's wild. He's taken this massive stack of historical accounts, theoretical physics, highly anomalous data, and he's using it all to explain one of the most baffling locations on Earth, which is Skinwalker Ranch.
Right.
Rasmussen isn't just saying, oh, weird things happen there. He is providing a mechanical, physics-based argument for an ancient conscious craft that is trapped deep inside a solid stone mesa.
And to really grasp how a metal ship could possibly end up entombed in solid rock, without leaving a tunnel behind it, we have to rethink everything we know about movement, which is why Rasmussen's starting point is actually that very same swimming pool analogy.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because he shares a really interesting personal anecdote in his notes to illustrate this physical resistance. He talks about how he does this form of weightlifting, but he doesn't use iron plates or dumbbells or anything.
Right, he uses the pool.
Yeah. He simply gets in a pool and does these rapid arm movements underwater. Because water resistance scales with speed. The faster you try to, punch or sweep your arm, the heavier the water feels against your hand.
There's a very specific mechanical reason for why that fluid behaves that way. And it comes down to a phenomenon called cavitation.
Cavitation, okay.
Right. So when you move any object through a liquid, the molecules in front of that object, they have to physically separate. They flow around the contours of the object, and then they have to close back together behind it.
So it's essentially like parting a dense crowd of people. You walk through a busy sidewalk, people step aside to let you pass.
Yeah, that's a perfect way to visualize it.
And the moment you move forward, the crowd kind of shuffles back in to fill that empty space you just left behind.
Exactly. But consider what happens if you try to sprint through that crowd at, say, 30 miles an hour.
He's going to cause a riot.
Right, because the people simply do not have the reaction time to fill the gap behind you. In fluid dynamics, when a propeller or a hull moves too incredibly fast, the water molecules literally do not have the time to collapse back together.
Oh, wow.
They're pushed outwards so violently that an empty space forms right behind the moving object. It creates an actual vacuum bubble in the water.
And as Rasmussen points out in his notes, and this is something, we all learn in grade school, science, vacuums suck.
They do. Nature abhors a vacuum.
Right. It wants to fill that empty space immediately.
And that sudden, really aggressive need to fill the vacuum creates a massive backward force on the object. So you have your engine's thrust pushing the vehicle forward, but simultaneously you're generating this intense, violent suction, pulling it backward.
That sounds destructive.
It is. Eventually you hit an equilibrium where that backward force becomes stronger than your forward thrust. You hit an absolute physical speed limit. You simply cannot push through it with conventional propulsion because the medium itself is actively fighting back.
Which raises a massive question for you to ponder. If physics creates this hard, unbreakable speed limit in water due to cavitation, how on earth Are we seeing military reports of UAP's unidentified anomalous phenomena traveling at hundreds of knots under the ocean?
Exactly.
I mean, we have radar and sonar data of objects moving at impossible speeds underwater. Why aren't the crafts ripping themselves apart? Why don't they hit that cavitation wall and just shatter?
Well, this is the crux of the problem. To bypass those limits, humanity's usual answer is to just, build a bigger, stronger engine.
Right, more power.
But adding more conventional thrust underwater just creates more violent cavitation. It's a losing battle. To move at those speeds, you have to stop playing by the rules of ordinary space-time entirely.
So you can't just fight the water.
No, you can't. You have to change the fundamental relationship between the vehicle and the medium it's traveling through.
Which is where Rasmussen takes a major conceptual leap, and he brings up Bob Lazar.
Yes.
Now, I know Lazar is a highly controversial figure for a lot of people. Back in the late 80s, he famously claimed he worked at a secretive site called S4 near Area 51, and his entire job was supposedly to reverse engineer extraterrestrial craft.
Right, which is a polarizing claim.
Super polarizing. But regardless of where you stand on Lazar's overall story, Rasmussen zeroes in on a very specific mechanical detail from Lazar's claims about the ship's propulsion system.
A gravity engine.
Exactly. Lazar insisted the engine wasn't just blasting an anti-gravity force downward, like a chemical rocket or a jet engine.
And the crucial piece of evidence for that, according to Lazar's account anyway, was his own physical safety.
Oh, right, when he walked under it.
Yeah, he claimed he could physically crawl underneath the craft while the engine was fully powered on and emitting a field. If that engine were projecting a conventional Newtonian force, meaning like a massive physical thrust pushing against the Earth to lift a heavy metal ship, he would have been instantly crushed into the floor the second he got under it.
So if it's not pushing against the ground to achieve lift, what on earth is it doing? Rasmussen introduces this amazing analogy to explain how gravity actually works in this context.
It's a bathtub analogy.
Yes. He says to think of space-time like water draining out of a bathtub. As the water goes down the drain, it doesn't just pull straight down, it creates a spinning vortex.
Right, a whirlpool.
Yeah, and if you put a little rubber duck near that drain, it gets caught in the swirl and pulled down into it. Gravity isn't just a giant invisible magnet sitting in the center of the Earth pulling things toward it in a straight line. It is a literal spinning and curving of the fabric of space and time.
What's fascinating here is, if you take that analogy a step further, it completely changes how we view propulsion.
How so?
Well, if gravity is a manipulation of the fabric of space-time, then this theoretical engine isn't fighting gravity with brute force thrust. It is manipulating the fabric itself.
Okay.
It doesn't push against our reality.
Yeah.
It creates a completely separate, self-contained envelope, like a bubble of alternate space-time around the craft.
Yeah. A bubble, meaning it essentially brings its own isolated environment with it wherever it goes.
That is the theoretical mechanism, yeah.
Yeah.
And the implications in physics are just staggering. In these models, alternate spacetimes cannot see or interact with each other in a conventional, frictional way.
So they don't touch.
Right. So to our reality, to the water in the ocean or the air in the sky,
Yeah.
this bubble acts essentially like a void. It registers as nothingness.
Oh, I get it. Because it's not part of our physical rule book anymore? The water molecules aren't parting and rushing back together, creating that cavitation vacuum, because the water isn't actually interacting with the physical metal hull of the ship.
Exactly.
The ocean is just sliding seamlessly around this frictionless bubble of alternate space-time that completely solves the underwater speed limit problem.
It negates friction entirely. Inside that bubble, the craft is sitting in its own isolated pocket of reality. And because it's totally decoupled from the resistance of our world, the craft can move with essentially infinite acceleration in any direction.
That's incredible.
It is. Now, light is still interacting with it in some complex way, which is why observers report seeing glowing or distorted shapes. But the physical field around it is a massive distortion of the local environment.
Okay, I mean, I can wrap my head around slipping through water or air inside a frictionless bubble, but moving through solid land is a completely different ballgame.
It really is.
Rasmussen claims these craft can move through solid rock. How does an alternate space-time bubble allow a tangible metal ship to pass through dense dirt and stone?
It requires a massive leap in how we conceptualize solid matter.
Yeah.
And to illustrate the mechanics of this, Rasmussen brings in a source that, admittedly, seems to come out of completely nowhere.
Oh my God, that is an understatement. When I was reading through the notes for this deep dive, I actually had to pause and reread a section because the source material takes this wild detour.
The documentary?
Yes. Rasmussen brings up an old documentary from the 1970s called East of Krakatoa. It features a man named John Chang, who is also known as Dynamo Jack. Chang was this enigmatic martial arts figure who supposedly could manipulate his kind energy, his life force, to create measurable electricity, heat, and vibrations directly from his bare hands.
It is definitely a sudden pivot from quantum physics to mysticism.
It's a massive pivot. I have to be honest, I was extremely skeptical here. Are we really using a 1970s martial arts documentary about mystical energy to explain astrophysics and UAP propulsion? It feels like we are mixing magic tricks with hard science.
And your skepticism is completely warranted. It's really important to separate the mythology of the documentary from the physical model Rasmussen is trying to extract from it.
Okay, fair.
He isn't asking us to believe that John Chang was an alien spacecraft. He is using a very specific feat demonstrated in that film as a visual and mechanical model for how solid through solid transit might occur.
Okay, well, let's look at the specific trick because the visual in the documentary is undeniably crazy. Chang takes a normal, flimsy wooden chopstick. He places it vertically against the top of a thick, solid wooden table. He supposedly focuses his energy, and then he just pushes that flimsy chopstick straight down directly through the solid table.
It looks completely impossible.
It does. And the truly insane part is the aftermath. When he pulls his hand away, the chopstick is just resting there, sticking straight through the wood. The table looks as though it was originally built around the stick. There are no burn marks, no splintering, no massive hole.
To a casual observer or even a conventional physicist, that looks like a parlor trick. But Rasmussen breaks down the theoretical mechanics of what an anomaly like that would actually require.
Okay, what's his take?
Well, Chang is clearly not melting the entire table. He isn't setting it on fire, and he certainly isn't using brute force to splinter the wood, otherwise the floozy chopstick would snap instantly.
Obviously, yeah.
Instead, Rasmussen proposes that if this were a physical phenomenon, it would be a highly localized anomaly.
Yeah.
A temporary liquefying or decoupling effect occurring only at the very leading edge of that chopstick.
So just the microscopic boundary where the tip of the chopstick meets the table?
That narrow boundary is the key, because that leading edge's structural integrity is compromised or shifted out of phase. The material temporarily parts or liquefies, allowing the solid object to slip right through.
Wow.
And the crucial detail is that the moment the chopstick passes, the material instantly solidifies back behind it, leaving no trace of the passage.
Oh, wow. Okay, I see where Rasmussen is going with this. If we scale that up to the UAP space-time bubble we were just talking about, the craft itself is the chopstick.
Exactly.
It doesn't need to have a giant Star Wars-style laser beam melting millions of tons of Earth to fly through a mountain.
No, because that kind of brute force thermal energy would be catastrophic. It would require unimaginable power and leave a massive tunnel of glowing lava behind it.
Right.
The localized anomaly model bypasses that entirely. Only the leading edge of the craft's spacetime bubble needs to interact with the rock.
Because that leading edge of the bubble is operating entirely outside ordinary space-time. As it presses against the solid rock of a mountain, it creates that localized distortion. The solid land simply gives way to this alternate space-time, parting at a molecular level, letting the craft slip through the solid Earth as if it were moving through empty air.
Yes.
And then the rock just seamlessly closes back up behind the bubble.
It creates a temporary, localized permeability. The solid matter doesn't go anywhere. Its relationship to the space the craft occupies is just briefly suspended.
That perfectly bridges the gap between fluid dynamics and solid matter. But wait. If that bubble is the only thing keeping millions of tons of solid rock from interacting with the metal hull of the ship, what happens if the propulsion system stutters?
Oh.
I mean, if you are a pilot and you are flying this craft 2 miles deep inside a mountain, relying on this space-time envelope, and your engine dies,
Yeah.
you don't just crash.
No, you would be instantly perfectly entombed.
The moment the bubble drops, the rules of our space-time violently reassert themselves. The rock stops being permeable. You are instantly encased in solid, unyielding stone with absolutely no tunnel leading out.
Which brings us directly to the geographical centerpiece of Rasmussen's entire thesis.
Skinwalker Ranch.
Yes.
For anyone unfamiliar, this is a 500-acre property in the Uinta Basin of Utah that is basically the one capital of the unexplained. We're talking decades of study by private researchers, scientists, even classified government programs.
It's heavily monitored.
Very. And through all that rigorous testing, they have identified something incredible there. Over a very specific geographical feature on the property called the mesa, there is a massive invisible anomaly. It has a measured radius of about 2,000 feet.
And this anomaly is not based on folklore or campfire stories. It is a measurable physical barrier that actively interferes with modern technology.
Oh, absolutely.
When researchers fly advanced drones into this specific airspace, the drones frequently hit what appears to be an invisible wall and simply drop out of the sky.
Which is wild on its own.
Yeah, and GPS systems completely fail or show wildly impossible coordinates, suggesting the space itself is distorted. Weather balloons and rockets launched directly into this area wildly change course, as if they are ricocheting off a solid dome.
They've even gone as far as drilling deep into the dirt and rock of the mesa itself, directly beneath this aerial anomaly. And when they pull up the core samples, they found ancient ceramics and strange, highly engineered metallic materials that appear to have been buried there for thousands of years.
Right.
So here's where it gets really interesting. Taking all of these distinct puzzle pieces, the cavitation limits of water, Lazar's space-time engines, the chopstick slipping through the table without a trace, and the physical barrier at Skinwalker Rasmussen lays out his ultimate theory. Thousands of years ago, an advanced extraterrestrial craft was utilizing one of these space-time bubbles to travel directly through the solid rock of the Skinwalker Mesa.
And mid-transit, it suffered a catastrophic failure.
The engine died, the bubble dropped. The solid rock of the mesa instantly reasserted itself, and the craft got inextricably stuck, perfectly entombed deep inside the stone.
This synthesis ties the bizarre phenomena of the ranch to a tangible mechanical failure. Rasmussen suggests that the 2,000-foot anomaly researchers are measuring today, this invisible dome deflecting rockets and scrambling GPS, is actually the remnant of that space-time propulsion system.
Wow.
The ship is hopelessly trapped in the rock, but its engine wasn't completely destroyed. It is still stuck on idle.
It's like a car engine left running in a locked concrete garage. It's trapped, but it's still humming.
Exactly. The system is heavily damaged and weak, but the space-time emitter is still functioning just enough to project this bizarre, distorted force field into the sky above and into the ground below.
So it's constantly warping ordinary space-time in that localized 2,000-foot radius?
That's right. That explains why whenever modern researchers try to push physical objects or electromagnetic signals through it, the anomaly deflects or absorbs them. It's an ancient, buried machine autonomously trying to maintain its bubble.
The idea of a broken, buried space-time engine humming away under a mountain is an absolutely incredible theory. It takes the paranormal weirdness of the ranch and makes it feel almost mechanical.
It does ground it a bit.
But, as I read further into the research, I realized this mechanical theory doesn't explain one of the most famous and frankly unsettling aspects of Skinwalker Ranch.
The reactions.
Yes. The anomaly doesn't just sit there statically like a dead magnet or a broken radio tower. It seems to actively react to the people studying it.
And that reactive nature is the most confounding variable for any purely mechanical hypothesis. When researchers at the ranch run a targeted experiment, like when they launch a rocket into the zone or broadcast a specific radio frequency or even just aggressively dig a hole in the mesa, the 2,000-foot bubble doesn't just passively deflect things.
Right.
It changes its behavior. It shifts.
It retaliates almost. It suddenly produces visible UAPs in the sky. It sends bizarre, highly localized electromagnetic signals that drain camera batteries in seconds. In some of the more extreme experiments, researchers claim the anomaly has even transmitted actual recognizable words or messages through their spectrum analyzers.
Which is terrifying.
Seriously! A broken engine buried in the dirt shouldn't care if you shoot a bottle rocket at it. It certainly shouldn't be sending radio messages in response.
A purely mechanical engine wouldn't. And this leads to the final and undoubtedly most paradigm-shifting piece of Rasmussen's puzzle. He posits that these highly advanced extraterrestrial crafts are not piloted with joysticks, steering wheels, or physical control panels.
Oh, boy.
They are controlled entirely through consciousness.
Consciousness, meaning the pilot operates the ship via ESP or telepathy or some form of mental projection.
Exactly.
I have to pause here again because this is where the theory asks for another massive leap of faith. Wait, so we are mixing advanced quantum physics and space-time manipulation with telepathy.
I know, it sounds like pure science fiction. But Rasmussen frames it within the evolving understanding of modern physics. Rasmussen is an engineer by training, but his notes mention he has also undergone shamanic training.
Really?
Yeah, which gives him a really unique lens on the intersection of mind and matter. He argues that consciousness acting as a manipulative physical force isn't completely out of the realm of possibility anymore. We already observe strange observer effects in quantum mechanics, where the mere act of a human observing a particle fundamentally changes that particle's behavior.
So if observation can change a particle, a highly advanced technology might harness that mental focus to directly interface with a space-time engine.
Exactly the point. The pilot's mind becomes the steering wheel.
Mm.
The consciousness is integrated into the ship's operating system. I want to make sure you, the listener, are tracking just how wild the implication of this claim is. If the ship crashed thousands of years ago, and the engine is still idling, and the engine requires a conscious link to operate, Rasmussen is literally saying that whatever alien consciousness was originally running this ship is still somewhat active inside the rock.
It is a radical proposition, but it perfectly fits the observed reactive data of the ranch. If the engine and the pilot are inextricably linked, then the consciousness must still be present, at least in some diminished, fragmented, or digitized form.
So pulling all of these massive concepts together, what does this ultimately mean for the researchers at Skinwalker Ranch?
It means that the Skinwalker Mesa anomaly isn't just a physical barrier. It is a complex cocktail. It is a blend of a lingering, damaged space-time propulsion emitter and the remnants of the consciousness that was, and perhaps still is, wired into it.
It reacts to the rockets and the digging because it is actively aware of them. And Rasmussen firmly believes that if researchers can find a way to keep safely drilling and penetrating that mesa anomaly, they won't just find more strange dirt or old pottery, they will eventually hit the physical hull of the craft itself.
Okay, we have covered some incredibly dense and fascinating ground today. Let's do a quick recap to tie it all together for you. We started at the swimming pool, looking at the sheer physical limits of moving through water, the violent wall of cavitation that makes it impossible to go beyond a certain speed with conventional thrust.
Right.
From there, we looked at the alternative, Bob Lazar's vacuum bubbles. The idea that a craft can bypass physics entirely by carving out its own alternate space-time, slipping through our reality untouched.
Which then provided the framework for understanding Dynamo Jack's chopstick trick, demonstrating how highly localized anomalies can allow solid objects to effortlessly melt through other solid objects, which is the exact mechanism a UAP might use to navigate the subterranean Earth.
And all of those seemingly disconnected threads brought us directly to a rocky mesa in Utah, where a 2,000-foot invisible barrier is actively swatting drones out of the sky, all leading to Rasmussen's ultimate unifying theory: an ancient, conscious spacecraft trapped and idling inside solid rock for millennia.
It is a brilliant, provocative synthesis of physics, anomalous data, and the nature of mind. But it leaves us with a profound philosophical question to mull over long after the data is analyzed.
What's that?
If Rasmussen's theory is true, and these incredibly advanced crafts are operated by consciousness rather than physical controls, it completely blurs the line between a machine and a biological entity. If a space-time engine is deeply, inextricably linked to a pilot's mind, and that system gets trapped inside a dark, silent mountain for thousands of years, at what point does it stop being a broken piece of technology and start acting more like a ghost haunting a landscape?
Wow. A conscious ghost in the machine, buried alive under a mountain. What an incredible, unsettling image to leave on. Thank you so much for coming on this intellectual journey with us today and exploring these wild frontiers of physics and the unexplained. Keep looking at the world a little differently and keep questioning the reality around you. We'll catch you next time.